Hey, my name is Megan Bradley. I'm the lead mussel biologist at Genoa National Fish Hatchery, and you're looking at an overhead view of the hatchery with all the ponds spread out and the Mississippi River in the background. Genoa is a national fish hatchery, which means that we're run by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which means that we actually get to work not just in a single state like Iowa or Wisconsin like the state DNR does, but we get to work across the entire country. This map shows some of the places that we get to send fish and mussels and dragonflies. So everywhere from over here in Florida up to the northeast in New York, and then all the way out into the southwest, we get fish and send fish all over the U.S. So the hatchery is important because we raise fish and mussels and dragonflies that are endangered or in need of protection. And so these are everything from lake sturgeon, which are not yet endangered, to 14 species of mussels. 5 to 6 species of those are definitely federally endangered. Over here on the left, we have a species that's a species of concern, so a species that we're considering for federal listing. And then we get to work together with partners all across the United States to raise species for conservation. So for mussels, one of the things we get to do is go out and restore mussels that we raise to our rivers. And this is a crew of people releasing mussels in a grid so that we can come back and kind of know how many mussels there should be in this area. Something else we get to do that's really valuable is work with our tribal partners to restore fish. So trout and lake sturgeon as well. They're really important partnerships that help us help our tribal partners restore species. So if you're wondering what a freshwater mussel is, here are a few shells. These are Higginsii pearly mussel shells. That's a federally endangered species that actually is the reason why the mussel program started at Genoa National Fish Hatchery. Up at the top, we have a couple of female mussels that were used to produce juveniles. And then down here at the bottom, we've got mussels that are hatchery reared babies. One of the things you notice if you look at the shells, you see all the lines. Those are growth rests or winter rest periods. So that's a year's worth of growth between those dark lines. So you can estimate how old a mussel is by looking at the shell. If you notice and look really closely here, you can see those pieces of plastic. It looks like a sticker on the shell. Those are actually marks or tags so that when we find the animals again in the wild, we can tell that they were raised from the hatchery. And it's one of the ways that we evaluate whether we're successful with the work that we're doing raising mussels here on station. So mussels are actually pretty unique in that, at least the native freshwater kind, in that they require a host fish. And so that works. The larval stage of the mussel, a little bit like a caterpillar, but not at all like a caterpillar, really more like a little Pac-Man, has to attach to the gills of a fish. And so in that time, it goes from being an organism that can only exist for maybe 24 hours before it's completely dead and it can't transform, into a juvenile mussel on the gills of a fish. And then one of the things that we do here at the hatchery is we actually put those infested fish out in cages in the river, and then we come back at the end of the summer season and we collect the baby mussels out of the cage, and then we tag them. Those are some Higginsii, and then put them out in the river like you saw just a minute ago. Mussels are pretty cool. They're really important in aquatic ecosystems. We're going to kind of take a trip over here and we're going to pass an aquarium so you can see some fish. But mussels are important in ecosystems because they stabilize habitat. They filter the water, so they eat a lot of the things that pass through. You find that fish communities and aquatic insect communities are larger, more significant over freshwater mussel beds, because mussels eat the things that float in the water and they repackage that, and their waste that they put out is actually food for insects, which the fish like to eat. Now, this is a nice poster. We've got a couple of species up here on the top right, the fat pocketbook and the scale shell, 2 species that are extirpated, which means that they are no longer found up in this part of the United States. They're very endangered species. And then as we go down, we've got some endangered species. We have state-listed species. So these are things that might be stable in part of their range but are extirpated or have disappeared from other states. And then we have common species. And so these common species are things that you might find out on the Mississippi if you're out pollywogging or in your creek. These are things like a giant floater or a plain pocketbook. We've got some beautiful three-horn woodybacks. These guys get to be about the size of golf balls. And then we have some beautiful black sand shells, which are a state-listed species in a couple of states that use walleye as their host. So there are actually about 297 species of mussels in North America. And it's really amazing to be able to go out and find all of their host fish. Now, if you're interested in trying to help save the mussels, because they are canaries in those coal mines of our rivers and streams, and once they start to disappear, it's a good indicator that fish, insects, amphibians, and then humans are actually going to find things that are dangerous about those waters. Then some of the work you can do is to try to maximize the fertilizer that you put on your lawn, not to mow right to the edge of your stream, to keep plastics out of the river. We're starting to find microplastics. They're tiny, tiny pieces of plastic, so small that we can't see them, but about the size of the food that mussels eat, that are in our rivers as well. So these are some of the things that we can do. Now, we welcome you to visit the hatchery. If you want to come and see the interpretive center where we are today, taking a look at some of our posters, you can check out our website to find out what the schedule is like. And we'd look forward to seeing you again sometime in the future. Thanks so much.